I'm very aware of my race, like, all the time, in a way that I think I'm maybe someone's getting used to it, but it still is like when I look in a room, like department events, I'm like, oh wow, it's really, I can count like who the Black people are, and so that's like very different. That's a very different experience. Is like just being really hyper aware of like how much I stand out, like whether it's my personality, like my identity, my physical appearance, like literally just being Black in this space, and then you add then my research and then like those conversations. So I feel like I find pockets of people here that get it, understand, but generally I don't really have this sentiment or like feeling that like, that everybody thinks is like it matters. And I don't need that validation, but like it's different when I'm like also being affirmed in it in this space versus like me doing the affirmation or like individual people here and there.
In my field and probably all the others, it's sometimes really difficult to know the right kinds of language to use. Philosophy has been historically like super isolated to the really wealthy, those from a particular background. It's still one of the fields in which there are like almost no people of color whatsoever, especially not Black women. And so I think some of the issues was just realizing that like I was maybe one of, if not maybe the only Black female grad student that our department specifically has had. In my time here, there have been no others. And so in that sense, despite having a great faculty and great other grad students, I think it can feel kind of isolating to be the only Black person in my department, and I had to like find other ways to get community in that sense because the department just couldn't provide it, unfortunately.
It can feel quite isolating. Also having to get the representation of the faculties to hearing and also celebrating with you in the way that you would like to be celebrated. It's one thing doing well. It's another thing having someone to be happy for you in the way that you expect them to be happy for you. So I would say that that's one thing that WashU could do better in terms of having more faculty representation.
If anything would have been like a challenge for me, and this might be very trivial, it's the fact that like I didn't realize that in the American setting, people can be so polite and so impersonal at the same time. Like, I don't know how. I never would have imagined that a person can be, like, very impersonal and very polite at the same time, because I come from a place where people are very personal. People don't mind their business. But, and at the same time, they don't, there's not so much emphasis placed on, like, politeness or like caring about your feelings. We do have very polite people in Nigeria, but like it's not the upfront thing you're thinking about when you're making connections with people. So just learning that about like the social sphere here, the fact that, there's always, a difference in expectation, like when you're relating to people here. That was very interesting for me. Even academically, the way I have been trained, like as a scholar, as a professional, as an artist, even when I worked in academia, was very, very different. It was a different pace. It was like a different vibe altogether from like what the academical expectations are in this place. But like I said, I feel like I have been given all the resources at my disposal to like to be able to meet up with these new expectations, and I'm very grateful for that.
My department, the faculty members are also very, very welcoming, although not representative. So I would say it's not been so hard. It's just been, having to feel whether I've earned this place or I have to keep showing myself approved that I deserve to be here, and having to always look over my shoulders to think who is saying what and who's not. Yeah, things like that. Also, I don't have family here, so it's quite challenging to have to navigate the time zones, having to talk to family back at home, and having that community and that support in the way that I would want it. I'm not saying that there's not a community here, but in the way that I would appreciate it.
I don't know. I think there's a natural imposter syndrome that happens.
Like, you're like, I'm here, and I don't see very many of me here. Am I supposed to be here? Do I know enough to be here? How do I still be myself in this space? So I think those are the, if I, as a quick thought, those are the first things that come to mind as challenges that I've really been having to work through.
And I also feel a pressure of almost needing to present an image of what a black man should be in graduate education, because a lot of these people probably have never interacted with a black person in graduate education. So I feel like I'm kind of setting the example of what a black man should be in this type of space. And that means I kind of want it to be positive. And that means I feel like I need to succeed and not make mistakes and present myself in a way that seems professional. And so I kind of sometimes feel confined in these spaces to act a certain way. And so it can be pretty draining. And so that's challenging, but in the sense that it has made me put a lot of effort into the work that I do. And again, I'm in my 5th year right now, so it has got me here, and luckily I've been able to handle it. But I could understand if a lot of other people couldn't handle that. So it's like I don't like the trade-off that comes from being marginalized in these spaces like that. It can help us, but at the same time, it's a lot of pressure too.
I think sometimes I'm like, I cannot be the only representation in the field. Like, I think it's given me a lot of caution and awareness of the ways in which, like, I'm not the one-size-fits-all, like, black representation, and that people might see that of me because I'm the only black person in the room today or something like that. But there are a lot of experiences that I have that are unique and different from other people's experiences, and I think I have this anxiety, but I'm going to say respect for making sure I never forget that I'm only one kind of black person. I only have my set of experiences, and the point isn't to make everyone realize that my view is right, but rather to, like, continue to pave the way for people to come behind me and do the same thing that I'm doing. So I think there's like maybe a bundle of conflicting emotions. Some are really excited and really great, and others are more like, man, this is kind of a lot of pressure in a sense, and kind of like a lot of weight, but a weight that it feels honorable to get to carry, I guess, if that makes sense.
One of the biggest things that I would tell students, do not shy away or try to hide how you are authentically, because it's not only needed, but it's necessary. I always say, as you can see, I'm very colorful, very expressive. And so for some people, it can be a lot, but this is me, all of me, how I am. And if you're able to present yourself as, look, you're getting this in this raw state versus me trying to pretend, because at some point the mask is going to fall off anyway, and it'll drive you crazy. So the biggest thing I will say, the only thing that's going to really carry you through, especially in spaces like this where it's not predominantly black or whatever, or you don't see us in the way we want to, show up as your authentic self, because it's needed, and most of the times you are all you have until you find your community. So you got to be able to kind of grind it out and be like, look, if I don't have nobody else, I got me.
One of the biggest challenges that I did not realize would be a challenge is standing by the research that I would like to do, even if other people don't quite understand it or don't quite, I won't say believe in it, but it's maybe not as important to them, right? It may not be as important to them that I want the community that I live in and the communities around me, the black communities and minorities, to really heal and to have the tools to heal, so they're not dependent on the skills that I have, because it's not me that will be healing them, but it's them healing themselves. And how do we give them the tools to do that? And for some people, I'll say in my department, that may not be as important, right? And also maybe sort of the disconnect between what is said that is important and what is expressed as important in action.
I think the challenge has been initially was to retain my sense of self. I've watched colleagues and others forfeit their identity to be to have a PhD, rather than to be grounded and the PhD be a tool and a mechanism that helps them accomplish their goals. And so for me, the retaining my identity was the challenge, because I was fighting in some of my courses, like the ideologies that are great in the classroom, but when you go into the field, that's not the reality. So the contrast there, and it was, how do you fight this fight? And it moved from how do you fight this fight to, is this your fight, right? I'm not here to evangelize a professor or a scholar or a faculty member to get on board with what I've seen in the field. My goal was to come to get the tools that I need to go back into the field. And so that was the challenge that I needed to overcome, and that was myself, and recognizing that I don't have anything to prove.
It's okay to not know what you want to do, and also it's okay to not accomplish what you wanted to do, because I'm constantly facing that decision myself of, will I actually accomplish maybe what I thought I could get out of being here at WashU? And I know it's a lot of pressure to realize that, but there's still skills that have been gained along the way that you can translate in the future. So it's okay to not get everything. There's still aspects of the journey that are just as equally important.
When I first came into the program, it was more of a thing of trying to prove to myself that I was worthy enough to be in the program or wear the WashU name. As I got towards the middle end of it, it shifted to wanting to open the door for others to come in that look like me. And especially now as I get closer to being completely done with my program, that has been at the forefront of my mind. How can I get others that look like me in this space to know about it? Yes, I'm not saying it's going to be easy by any means, but it's always a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat that there will be some times where you are like, why in the world am I doing this? I could drop this and go to something else. Is it worth it? But I will say the journey has taught me a lot, and if it wasn't for me going through certain things, I wouldn't even know certain things about myself now.
I've learned that I have more capacity than it may feel like in moments. I think particularly maybe when you're in certain settings where there maybe aren't shared politics or shared values and interests, that I think, I think you can kind of get in a space of being like, yeah, I'm not going to do this or I can't do certain things, but I've been particularly this like specific school year, academic year, like really challenging myself to be like, no, like we can do more than what we maybe feel like in moments. So I think being in this space, in this institution, just like a PhD program has helped shape that.
What I offer is to understand and recall and stay connected to your why, right? It's your why that gets you through the all-nighters. It's your why that gets you through the experiences that you have that you can't make sense of. It's all of the people who sit on the other side of you graduating that are going to be the beneficiaries of everything that you've endured.
So when I think of the word legacy, I think of all of the lives that you touch, some that you know you touch, but some that you don't even know that you touch. And I try to share my experiences as big and as broadly as I can. And one thing I always say is like, when the time comes for you to bet on yourself, double down, right? Like if you want to pursue that question, pursue that question. If you want to collaborate with people, collaborate with those people. If you feel like you need to go to that conference and you don't have funding to go to that conference, find a way, because there is something on the inside of you that needs to be answered. And I hope I leave behind a legacy where people expand their octaves, they expand their range, they ask questions that people say, you can't do that. You can't answer those research questions. We ask them anyway. So I hope I leave behind a legacy of people who are willing to innovate, people who are willing to push the boundaries. And honestly, we need it now more than ever, right? When science is being challenged, the kind of work I do is being challenged. People don't even want to utter diversity. They think it's going to be problematic. So I hope I'm leaving behind a legacy that says, do it anyway. Do it anyway.